This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, I ask Joey about crying.
Woo!
This is what it sounds like when doves cry. That's not actually how the rhythm goes. This is what a Joey sounds like. And this is what an executive producer and lacrimator, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess, and I think it was pretty close.
Maybe I found it at some point and then lost it again and then refound it. Our house is clean mostly because we've been having our own personal catch up and we forgot to record a podcast. And so, Jess, based on our own personal conversations, the topic that emerged, would you like to bring it to our attention?
Yeah, sure. It feels appropriate that I bring to the floor the topic of crying. As a world-class, maybe that's speaking too highly of myself, but lacrimator is an excellent word in Spanish.
thank
I know
you.
lágrimas is tears, but I didn't know that we had a variation of our very own, which is really awesome. Also turns out that in ancient Roman tombs, there was a kind of vial thought to be a lacrimal vase, where like maybe they actually like stored tears in there. I don't know what that did for you in the afterlife, but that's an interesting fun fact. Anyway, I digress.
A lacrimal vase.
Lacrimal vase. It's like that's where I hold them. It's where I hold your tears. It's been one of those weeks. And by one of those weeks, I mean, we were joking that maybe on average, I'm a sort of 2 to 3 times a week crier type. And this maybe is an above average type week. The example that I reference is that video or that interview where Kristen Bell got surprised on her birthday with sloths, her absolute favorite. And she explained before watching the video, she wanted to contextualize. She was like, anytime that I think it was like below a 3 and above a 7, I'm crying. Like anytime I'm having some like high emotional valence experience, like tears will happen. And I completely relate to this sentiment. And it's interesting when that gets blended with being at work and the sort of historical precedence that crying is unprofessional and you're not supposed to do it at work, or if you do, you're supposed to hide it. And I'm fortunate that I work at a place that understands that I'm a big crier. And a few folks this week just saw me in the middle of the workday just see something that made me cry, and a coworker pulled me aside later and was like, I have to be honest with you, but that was extremely relatable. I can't help but wonder what are the rules about crying in public?
I always think of there's like a list, and I can't think of the entire list, but like one of the like check boxes to becoming a New Yorker is that you've cried in public and you didn't care. Well, like on a subway or on a stoop or like in a coffee shop or something like that.
Right. And there's the tacit agreement from all strangers surrounding you that they should completely leave you alone.
Yeah.
While that's happening.
Don't acknowledge and that unless additional resources are requested. Yeah.
Or if they're clearly not apparent, you can, without eye contact, offer a tissue.
Yes, that is like that would be the most New York form of support, where like I've heard people tell stories of like no one was talking to me and a bad thing happened, and then someone was immediately available for support and didn't say any words to me and left. Yeah, like someone just handed me $5 and continued on their day. The sort of like, what are the rules of? It's interesting because I don't personally cry often, and I also have no.
Wow, what's that like?
Yeah, how does that feel? But I also have no judgment to people who are more prone to crying, and I'm sort of like more curious about it. Like, what is that experience like? And is my emotional state, or am I sort of, I don't know, like subjugating some portion of my emotions, or like, is this like a cultural thing, or am I just sort of like, whatever, my personal constitutional makeup just doesn't include that thing. But I like, when people, we were talking before, like, I can't think of a time I've ever happy cried. Like, I feel happiness, and I feel like I express happiness externally, like my affect projects, like if I am happy or sad or whatever. But the sort of lacrimal response is not there.
Wow. Yeah, I can confirm. Happy cries. They're still cries, to be sure. I actually think one of the weirdest side effects of being a crier, including a happy crier, is that then people start to benchmark your emotions by whether crying did or did not happen. Like, I've had people in my life who have admitted that, like, they judge whether I think a gift is good enough if I'm crying when I receive it. I'm like, that is not okay. Like, you're not allowed to do that to me. Because I think that crying is that very overt signal of whatever emotion you might be feeling. And I think for many people, it signals that that emotion is really strong. It's maybe unusual that for me, and like I'm quicker to activate lacrimal glands, I guess. Is that what it's called? um, and don't know enough about why we cry. Oh, and maybe you're onto it. Do you know?
Well, I'm like, I've been looking at uh some things, like asking like a string of Google questions as you're talking, and it's like like triggering things for me. Interestingly, what they call psychic tears have a different chemical composition than regular tears. Like, if you have your allergies are acting up, or you're cutting onions, or your eyes are just hydrating themselves, you have something in your eye, whatever. And the psychic tears, like any tear produced as an emotional response, is stickier and stays visible on your face longer, which is interesting, right? Because it is, in some ways, crying it is like communicating to other people that you need some sort of support in some capacity, maybe, right? Like, you're in a moment where, like, the idea of like happy tears maybe is like also like a response, like draw people closer to you because you're feeling happy and want to share a happy moment, right? Versus like, if you're feeling sad or some other negatively oriented emotion, you may want someone close so that you can address that feeling and sort of externalize it, whatever. But then they also say, like, based on, in this one article, like based on um, a German study, that people who feel less connected cry less frequently, and may have like more feelings of like frustration or anger or withdraw in response to negative emotions. And I'm like, shit, do I do that? am I that? Am I like the, I don't think I feel less connected, but you you tell me, you know me better than me, Jess.
I think it's interesting to even wonder about, like, how whether or not they are. It's this idea of using them that I'm hanging up on, of like whether they're useful in connection or not. I'm like, well, I don't know how much control we have over our crying, or at least I don't know how much control I have over my crying. Um, but what I can say is that I know personally I am much more liable to cry in the presence of the people that are closest to me. Maybe because some part of me knows that that person will understand what I'm feeling, and in that way maybe it is like has a useful mechanism in connection, but it's more actually that, at least I think it feels like it's the safety and understanding, mutual understanding with those people that makes it easier. But yeah, I don't think I'd really, it's making me pause to think about crying as a tool, uh, which also I think can like bring up other negative connotations, like the whole concept of crocodile tears and like trying to get something because you're crying for it, is like a whole manipulative tears landscape that
Yeah.
I don't relate to.
I mean, I don't know that I was thinking of it as like some, like Machiavellian method of manipulating those around you, as much as just sort of like an evolutionarily beneficial, like emergent trait that, as like social animals that we would have adopted. And which it, it sort of assumes crying as uh, inherently an external signal of communication, which I don't know if that is definitively true or not. Obviously, your eyes need to stay hydrated. We produce tears constantly, but then these psychic tears and the fact that they have like a different viscosity and that they stay on your face longer, and you can even see sort of like trails of dry psychic tears on someone's face to know, even if you weren't present in the moment that they were crying, that they may have cried. Like those things tell me that like it is just it leads me to think that they're like an evolutionary trait, that we're social animals. We need emotional support from one another. And so we've developed some way of ensuring that would happen more effectively.
It's also interesting because even another quick search has also like shown there are some theories that like, and emerging studies, I guess, of people reporting feeling better after having cried it out, basically, especially if they can do that in front of another person. And maybe in that way, there's also sort of that internal benefit of like having an outlet may itself be a meaningful processing mechanism.
Yeah, everyone will say like, or not everyone, many people will say like, oh, I just needed a good cry, or like even I I don't know if I've ever said this to Emerson or not, but like, do you feel better now? Like I feel like maybe I've heard people say that to like children after they cry for one reason or another, like just sort
Right.
of like getting it out,
Mhm.
like the catharsis moment of like not holding the bad things in.
Right, exactly. And I think maybe that's another thing where maybe societally we have judgments for and against, but there is something earnest, again, minus the crocodile aspect, but like theoretically anyway, for most people, there's something earnest about crying because it feels like, wearing your heart on your sleeve. It feels like an unfiltered moment. And maybe that sort of uh it takes me back to conversations we've had about sort of like the declawing or like what's it, bowing, or other mechanisms to like, or show your belly is the thing that you've said in conversations past, of like a type of vulnerability that uh maybe so in some contexts is can incite or invite judgment, and in other contexts maybe is the basis for new connection.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm looking at another study that is showing like tearfulness facilitates helping behavior, right? Like it is a very clear, like we instinctively understand what tearfulness is signaling, like that you
Yep.
potentially need help with something. And so it's interesting to think about it in the context of work. Like there are many things that I've heard over the years, either just from women or like read from women or women speaking in public forums or things that appear in movies about like don't cry at work, right? Like that is like a thing. I'm not making that up, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's where I think I started some of this is like people might say it's unprofessional to cry in the workplace and that you're supposed to like go into a place to cry. Like go to the bathroom, like don't show that. Yikes.
Yeah. But it's interesting, you know, if it is like such an effective signal for the need for help that like why we would, and I guess, I don't know, it like obviously it's combating like a lot of societal baggage around like damsel in distress types of ideas, and that those ideas are like false and, you know, detrimental.
Everybody cries. Like,
Yeah.
let's establish this.
Yeah.
Women are not the only people crying out.
Yeah. And I think, you know, boys have it sort of beaten either literally or figuratively into them that like you're not supposed to cry. But it's interesting to think about it as like very clearly we have this means of communication in extreme edges of emotion, and we are human beings existing in a cooperative environment trying to accomplish some end. And we're just like, cool, you can communicate these ways, but not these ways here. I don't, and I guess maybe it is like historical patriarchy of like the workplace was a predominantly male environment up until, you know, World War II, and we've made a huge progression, and now it is increasingly moving towards a female dominated place, certainly in like professional world, with the number of female graduates, you know, significantly exceeding male graduates and things like that. Like what does this sort of moray look like, or does the social taboo continue to exist, you know, when you're in your 40s or something, you know?
Yeah. Or maybe we all just have more tissue boxes sprinkled around because I might need it though, you know?
I'm just thinking about like other things that have popped up, like laugh yoga and stuff like that are like interesting things where you trick your body into laughing, and what starts as fake laughter moves into real laughter. And if there are like ways that, you know, I know like some actors can potentially just like make themselves cry like on a dime, and like I'm imagining being like, okay, we're gonna begin this meeting with a
good cry.
with a quick tearful meditation, and then we will begin our like exercise on Q4 performance numbers or something like that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is where it sounds like we just need to know more about how this works and like how to both activate and what the benefits are of trying to cry. That sounds like such a foreign concept, but right. Like I think it would be interesting to know more about what benefits there are, if any, to then harness.
Can I ask you just like a truly like armchair speculative question before we wrap up? Do you think sort of universally like an unexpressed emotion in any valent, like positive, negative, whatever, like an unexpressed emotion that's held in inherently transforms into a different emotion? I'm just thinking about like in instances where people feel an urge to cry because they're upset for one reason or another, but they like swallow it, and it goes from being like, I was sad about this or I was frustrated, to like by swallowing that moment, it like turns into like anger or like, you know, embitterment, or like, does it work the other way too?
Do we digest our feelings, basically?
Yeah, do we like, if you're digesting your feelings because it was not escaping through normal routes, like does it you're like fermenting them?
Ooh, pickled sad. Ooh,
pickled sadness. It's got probiotics.
You know, I think that you're hitting at something that is an interesting idea, which is that like the way that we treat a feeling, especially over time, can have an influence on that feeling. I believe that, or it just evolves into a different thing, or maybe same feeling is there, but it wants to be expressed differently.
Yeah.
Like a thing that you're deeply sad about, maybe you want to rage about externally, because that is like the way that it feels most natural to express. If you have pickled your sad for so long, yeah, like I don't know, maybe like Cameron Diaz in the cinematic classic The Holiday, you're gonna need to fall in love with Jude Law to finally unlock those years and years of repressed pickled sadness. And I don't know if I can repeat that for other humans in the world, but I don't know. There maybe there's like a reversal mechanism in time too.
It's making me think. Someone sent me a video of these two Australian comedians talking about like learning that if you hold in your farts, your body will reabsorb it, but where they wind up expelling is into your lungs and then out your mouth. And so like it makes me think about like the idea of like if you're not expressing your emotion in one way or another, like it's just going to come out somewhere where you didn't intend it to. In this case, your farts are coming out your mouth, and we should all avoid that.
Yeah. Gross?
Yeah, gross. So that brings us to Jess's wrap-up corner. What do you want to somehow incorporate tears to farts out your mouth? Through science.
Ooh,
through science.
For science? Well, I'm personally invested in the prospect that rules about crying around other people are changing. Even if it's just because we're experimenting with what is okay and not okay, and that we're trying to understand more about even what is so good about crying, if anything, in the first place. But it feels like there's definitely something untapped here. And the tears tap. Yikes.
Yeah.
Maybe we all maybe we could be making better use of, or at least I would feel a little less awkward if everybody else cried a bit more.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, so that's it. And next time you see a stranger doing that awkward look, like not wanting to mess up their clothes, but like it's getting a little nasty up there, like if you have a tissue, lend them a ply, that's the least we can do.
Well, we did it. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by lotion-free tissues. That lotion is terrible.
They don't absorb.
It's just like wipey. It's like the wipiest feeling. Ugh.
As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and Puffs Plus, Jess Vander.
You're welcome. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and the imagination of like cool tissue boxes that doesn't actually exist yet, but should, Alex Cantel.
We'd like
don't you think it should?
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and Mr. Two Ply, Les Jacobs. Just
two? Come on. And thanks to our production crew, Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestrich. I appreciate you for never judging me on all the times I have cried.
That's not true. And as always, thanks, Ellen. Special thanks
apparently not, because everyone's apparently judging.
We're all judging you. Sitting, watching, judging.
Apparently. I appreciate then thanks to those who kept that to themselves and challenged their preconceived notions of what is okay when it comes to crying in front of others.
Never swallow your emotions except for when they're negative towards me. That's the moral of this story.
And then just don't tell me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, burp them out somewhere else.
Ew. Why does it have to be why does it have to be some like expression of air?
I can't help it. We're like talking about physiology and it just somehow we got there, you know?
Other elements expressing of air.
Yeah,
water,
excretion of emotions and tears and
excretion. I like to give special thanks to excretion.
yeah.
Thanks for regulating
Yeah.
whenever is an imbalance of one place and another thing. Ugh. Anyway, things are hard. I'll go
Do we have
Cry somewhere.
other special thanks? Special thanks maybe to Dune. I'm gonna go see the second part.
I'm also gonna see it today. I'll let you know how it is.
It's interesting when you know, like I read the book, knew what happened, but then it's done different, so it's new. All right, we gotta go. Jess is
Gotta go.
running. All right, love you, mean it. Bye.
Whatever, Dune stuff. Okay, see you. Bye.